So what you're thinking about is you were talking about the dashboard, and that seems to be a
Yeah.
lot of people. Yeah, tell me more.
Because I think that each of our agencies are doing a nice job of their own respective areas, but I'd rather take it up to the macro level and say, okay, we are rolling out a new portfolio for K, and we're going to do influencer, affiliate, all the things. How is actually driving sales? How is that driving brand consideration? How is it hitting the funnel? In what ways? And then I could actually deliver that to, our CEO to say, this is why this marketing spend makes sense or it does not.
You,
So it's if I the more we can learn, I've been talking about doing this kind of dashboard for some time. And I actually tried to partner with organizations to help, but no one's really able to crack the nut. So I
yeah.
hope to learn how to at least get further along,
I
I
think
would
we
say.
can. I think we can do that. And the thing is about dashboards is that you hit it on the head when you said you'd like to be able to tell your CEO, "Hey, we did this and this happened, and it was supposed to." That's what we ought. That's what we get measured on. It used to be one day, maybe way back when, that somebody said, "Hey, I liked your spots" or something like that, but that doesn't matter. And finally, we're at a point where we're in our segment of the business and when I say our segment of the public relations, advertising, communications, it is literally about attribution. It is literally about measurement, and it never was, in the history. So I think you're spot on, Jill, when it's come to that. Iso, how about you? You're transferring from. You actually want to make a move from journalism
Yes.
to this. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, I'm already doing some consulting, and I've found that what agencies and organizations need most from me right now is basically guidance on how to tap into new media and make owned media that is relevant and that reaches audiences that they otherwise aren't able to reach. So I think where this class could be really helpful for me is, I always try to back my recommendations and my strategies with data. And I'm not sure that I'm optimizing all of the tools that are out there for me to do that as a storyteller, particularly for brands and businesses. So yeah, this is very new to me, and I've used a lot of the tools that, journalists use, but from like a communications and a PR strategy perspective, this is very new and I'm excited to learn more.
Well, you're spot on in terms of being in the right place at the right time. You are a storyteller. I mean, let's when you boil everything down, that's what you do. And so you're moving into an industry that's dying to have good storytelling. So now what you are looking for is that technique, that technology that'll allow you to maybe put some substance behind it. Not unlike what Jill or Al were talking about with respect to something that says, "Hey, look, I'm saying this is going to happen, but this is what I think, and this is why I think that because there's
Yeah,
data." Makes a lot of sense. Okay,
exactly.
cool. Yeah, and Krishna's, I love that perspective. I agree. That is a great perspective. And why don't you go ahead and pick up from there, Krishna?
Sure. So, a couple of things that I kind of want to get out. So the first is when I was doing marketing operations at DocuSign, I got a like a master's certification in Eloqua, and it was really helpful because it helped kind of with the automation of all of like marketing campaigns across DocuSign, and we got to work with Salesforce CRM system a lot. So I always found that side of the business interesting, but I always thought that there was like room for improvement. So that's one. And the second is I think no matter what marketing role you're in, analytics is deeply important, like all across the board. And anytime you try something or do something, you want to kind of know how are you doing, how are you performing to get some learnings out of that. So I think MarTech, AdTech, everything that's related to kind of that side of the business is extremely important and not emphasized enough. So I'm hoping that we can learn more and kind of see how it's valuable in our specific industries. And for me, that's marketing in technology.
You get the comment, Krishna, that Tableau or you've learned Tableau, and it took a long time, so to speak.
Yes.
Oh man, my hat's off to you if that's all it took, because that's a very difficult piece of engineering to master. So my hat's off to you. It's a very difficult one, and yet Eloqua I've heard of and I've never used. So I'm eager to hear more of what you have to say. By the way, it's impossible for any one of us or any five of us to have sampled all of these. But I've noticed through listening and hearing and looking at your pre information, there's a lot of you who worked with a lot of different platforms. So yeah, don't be bashful about bringing any of that forward. We're very, very interested in that. Cassandra, or do you go by
I also go by Cassie, but you can choose
Cassie?
yeah. Both are great.
I like good. Tell me about your situation.
Yeah, so before the role that I currently have had, which I've had for a while, or I've been on this team for a while, I have always sat on teams that were web communications or digital communications teams, and by virtue of the way they were structured, it was like half content people and marketing comms people and half uh IT web developers, designers, like the people actually like bringing the ideas to life. And we were always on the same team. And so by virtue of proximity, I learned a lot about um, technology, but more importantly, like how to think about the framework because the tools come and go, the technology evolves, but there's a lot of things that should remain the same in terms of best practices and like the way you think about implementing technology. And I miss that side that I don't really get that scratch that itch in my current role, although I'm always kind of pushing things forward. We have so much data. I'm always looking at data. I've tried 8,000 different dashboards. I don't really like dashboards, but I don't have a better solution. I'm curious if I learn new tools or tricks, or maybe I need more dashboards versus like one dashboard. I don't know. I just think I've always tried to fit so much into one thing or one report or so I'm curious to learn more and how people are using things and to also frankly kind of hear like what's out there as things are evolving with AI. Like how is that changing the game? Because it is.
Well, in the higher ed space, there's a plethora of data. We do not short on data, and it can be overwhelming, I think. And I think the other issue a lot with most all of you, and something we'll talk about in the case tonight that we're going to work through a little bit, is how do you get the organization to actually surface what's important? Because that's what I always found was kind of hard. It was like herding cats, as they say. The difficult challenge is to get everybody kind of on board and say, what are we trying to get at? How do we actually do that? So there's been Slack and there's been all kinds of different collaboration kinds of tools, and I don't use them so much. I'm kind of an individual, but I do at my university. I started a student agency, and they do agency work, and I pretty much stay away. And they've, hey, we want to try Asana, or we want to try this, and in a semester you can't get a real good read on any of it. Most of them have pretty good. It really comes down to it. Sharing information for them is Google Docs, so it's simple. They all know it, and I think that's something we have to think about sometimes. Is 90% of a dashboard works because everybody knows it. That's what it comes down to. So you almost have to force yourself to say, let's figure out how to do this. But that will be something we'll address in the case tonight. I think we've talked to everybody that's on board. Michelle's coming, and then we had who else? Empress, have we talked to her?
No.
There you are.
Oh,
Oh, you're not showing up. There you are. Did you just come on? I don't see you on the. Oh, there you are. I'm sorry. I only had my screen up. Oh, there we go. Now I'm. Oh, Professor, wake up a little bit. Wait, drink another cup of coffee. Hey, good to see you, Empress. I love it. Tell me about your situation. What are you looking for?
yeah. So I've tried throughout my whole career so many different tools, Martech, Comtech, and even AdTech. And so what I would like to do is condense how many tools I'm using and also be cost effective with it too, because I spent so much money, some that I'm still paying for to this day, and I'm on a hiatus from my company, but I really would like to just really hone in into what's the best platforms for me to use in my business and also to not spend so much money because I've tried almost, I'm not gonna say everything, but a lot of different platforms.
Well, you work a lot on, I mean, you've worked a lot anyway on your own entrepreneurial ideas. And when she talks about, when you talk about the fact that you spend a lot of money, so do I. Because even though I work for two universities and I use their resources a lot, I still have my own. I have clients I deal with, and you're right. And the other thing I do is also belong or buy into news sources, that I use. So those become expensive. You're right. The cost is a real serious issue. So how do we get that information? And with AI, there's a big story going on there anyway, with AI being kind of poaching some of the information, and that's always an issue. So good stuff, Empress. Thank you, Michelle. Let me see. Yeah, tell us about your situation.
So for excuse me, for me, when I think about what I would like to get out of the class, like some other people, as far as like a dashboard, I've created one previously with Power BI, but it still doesn't seem like it's enough. And then also to trying to figure out the best, really a tech stack for marketing. I've created like several tech stacks when it comes to like virtual hybrid events. And I've tried a ton of AI platforms and tools. And so really trying to hone in on what are the strongest. Like I said, like Empress, I've tried so many. I'm just trying to like really narrow it down, like what's going to be the best to support me. And then also too, when you're within an organization, while right now I'm a freelancer or a consultant, getting people to adopt. And it's hard. My previous organization, I kind of adopted myself and just kind of within my workflow. And it kind of slowly trickled out, but getting people to adopt that technology. Everyone says they want to use technology, but I think they really don't want to use technology, or they're just
Well,
afraid that maybe that's what it is.
yeah, and I mean, there's three kinds. Look, what we're dealing with in this class, in particular, is data. I mean, we could talk about technology, but we're really talking about data. And when you talk about data, you really kind of have to have three brains here. One of them is kind of having that interpretive brain to be able to understand what the client wants or what you want, and being able to communicate that to somebody that would be more of a technician. I think Cassie mentioned, you dealt with IT people, and you've all mentioned you've dealt with that IT person is very important because they're the ones that can actually move the X's and O's and get you to something that you're trying to get to. And then the third person is the person that can actually explain it to the board of directors, to the to the client that's not in it every day. So when you say, Michelle, that you're trying to get everybody on board, that has always been the issue. I'm dealing with I will not miss. I will be out of the country for class 2 because I'm making a long distance trip to talk to some folks about how they do exactly what you just talked about. How do you get people to adopt the technology and actually become knowledgeable enough about it to be able to use it? So I like where we're going. What we want to do now is I want to take you, I want to do the syllabus, and I'm just going to walk you through it real quickly. I've got a kind of a timing out here, so we're going to try to get everything done that we need to get done. But essentially, the course description, you kind of understand what that's about. I think you've all read that. The learning outcomes we're trying to get to, we're doing stuff you just talked about. Evaluating the capabilities and limits of technology, because there's limits. There's all this idea of vendors and what they do, and people selling the stuff and what it does and what it actually does. And we'll kind of sort that out. Developing the business requirements. If we're doing any kind of technology and we're working through some discipline like communications, public relations, or internal communications, or advertising, or marketing, or whatever the function is, and affiliate marketing, or whatever, you really have to have understanding what the business requirements are, because that's what your boss, your CEO, your shareholders, whoever it is, are going to be saying, hey, what have you done for me lately? They're going to be asking you, what did you do to move the needle? And that's really what it comes down to. And then the fourth thing is to improve that cross-functional integration, which we've talked, I think all of you talked about that. That's what we're going to try to get to. And the way we structure this course, essentially, I've brought on some case studies. We'll bring in speakers. We'll have people that'll, dazzle us with their knowledge and, and allow us to ask questions and all that kind of stuff, so that we can really see and hear firsthand what's going on. Another important thing I think is when we are on, I know this is kind of a crazy thing, but I'm kind of nutty about having cameras on and having everybody kind of be attentive. And the difference is that if we do that, then we'll probably most likely just be more attention oriented. This is the whole thing on grading and assessment. I'm not going to worry about that right now. We'll deal that with later. It's the mandatory stuff there. Mandatory. Yeah. So this idea of the way they set up the courses, prepare, demonstrate, explore, reflect, I like it. It works well, and I think it gives us a chance to kind of absorb the information. This is the first week we talked about, this understanding MarTech, AdTech, and ComTech, and the first video is pretty broad and basic. You could have your, 6-year-old nephew probably watch it and say, yeah, I get it all. But we'll get more and more detail as we move along. But you're going to find the things that are necessary. If you read a case, you have to kind of read the case and understand what that's about and be prepared, because we're going to talk about it, and you don't have to be chasing it down then. And then the follow-up stuff, like the assignments and so forth, those are things that are they'll be explained each week. And if there's ever an issue that you're unclear on, I try to give as much clarity as possible, but the reality is that, I could be writing forever and still be 100%. Yes, Isa.
Just a quick question to clarify for demonstrate. I took this as we had to read the case study for class because we would talk about it in class, even though that wasn't under prepare. Just like every professor does it differently. So would you mind just clarifying the order?
Matter of fact, I can do that. What I say down here and demonstrate how the instructor models applying the concepts. So I'm modeling applying the concepts through cases, for example, would be one way. Through a live discussion, through each week, someone is going to be asked to kind of give a 2 or 3 minute report on some issue. And that issue would generally be decided by the class in the week before. So before we end this class today, we're going to come up with something we'd like to have a student go out and chase down and just come up with 2 or 3 minutes. That's what I mean by that. You said that's a very good question. I appreciate you asking. Is that clear? You okay with that?
Yes. So
Any
basically
questions
what
there?
you're saying is be familiar with the material, but you won't really get into the weeds until class itself, unless you're the student that's assigned to chase down whatever it is.
That's right. Very well said. That's exactly it. Okay, so here we are. Then we're down to what else do we have to cover there? So when you get done, explorers after the fact, so now you're going to go out and I got some interest there, and there's some things to follow up on. Those are suggestions, and I've included them. Most of the time you have all of the information to get at that. If you don't, I will provide it for you, but that's what that is. Okay, what else do we have in there? Those are the remaining weeks that we go through. They're all there. And by the way, the fact of the matter is that I will be adjusting things as we go along. Well, you're changing the syllabus. Well, not major, but if we find we just aren't going in that direction as a class, I might redirect a little bit. None of the major stuff like reading materials or cases will change, but we might add or subtract some things based on what we want to get done. I'm trying to put as many videos up, and I don't know if you're like me, but when I watch videos, I watch them at 1.75 or 2 and try to get through it faster. It's just, that's what we do. You have fast ears. I try to have fast ears, and if I can't, I slow it down to play it again. But anyway. That's what that is. All right. So I'm going to take right now as a time to say, does anybody have any glaring kinds of concerns, questions, or things that you want to say? Hey, we did this as a cohort before and it didn't work, or we did this and we really like it, or something of that nature. Go ahead and speak up. Anybody that's brave.
I'll jump in. I think going back to the conversation we were just having about adjustments to coursework or topics, I think we're all for it because it's in real time and that's great. I think a challenge we have all experienced is keeping track of assignments when they're not aligned like in one place. So I think the ask, I would not to speak for everyone, but we've been through it, is if there are changes, if they could stay in the main syllabus on Brightspace, so that even if we're in class and hearing you, but we start working all week and then we start doing homework on the weekend, we could just go to one central source of truth and not have to have kind of like a wild goose chase to find out there's a change, but where is it and how does it get done?
Believe
So
me, I hear you loud and clear. And one of the things I try to do when you go to your next week, for example, it's up right now. And after class, I generally go to the following week. And I look on there and I see, first of all, hey, maybe we ought to focus more on this, that, or the other, but not changing anything. I will point it out. This is due next week, or this is something you ought to do this week. Generally like to put that up as a note that's maybe in bold, but I went back to school and got a master's and a PhD as an adult. That's what you're doing. And the frustration of it all was exactly what you just said. I don't have time to sort through all the minutia to get to be what I'm supposed to be doing. I'll try to do that for you, and because I think that's important. And so if go to Brightspace, you go to next week up, there should be guidance there. If I decide we're not going to do something, I'll make that a clear distinction also. Right now, I don't think I'm going to make any change to next week. When I get off of this tonight, I go to the next week and I look at it and say, this is what we ought to do. Am I saying I'm going to do that perfectly every time and you'll never have an issue? That would be silly but I'll try to make that because I know what your issues are. And I appreciate you saying that, Jill.
thank you so
Very
much.
So. Yeah. And anything else that anybody has, please bring it forward. What do we have on?
Just one thing. Are we going to talk a little bit at all on the final project today?
Probably not today, just because it's jam-packed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we've found it helpful to talk about it earlier on in the semester, just so that we can, set some goals on to make sure it's all ready by the end.
Couple of things there. Since normally 14 weeks, so usually by week 7 in a normal class, I will lay out not only the specific project, but the deliverables, and oftentimes we'll provide a exemplar. Now, I can't do that as class because we don't have a quote unquote exemplar for this. Next week, I will talk about it and I'll give kind of an overview and we'll take it from there. But that's what I'd like to do. The other thing I want to mention is that when we go to breakouts, if you're in there for 15 minutes, you're in there a long time. I have found that the more time that I give students to do something, the less the quality of the work. It's just we are, you don't get to do that at work. When you go to work, you don't get to, think about stuff for an hour. You get 10 minutes. Get it done and get it out, and let's get it on the table so we can talk about it. So that's the other thing is we only have 2 hours, so that's that. What else do we have? Anything else? Because this is the time to ask that.
I just wanted to get clarity. I know you touched on it a little bit with the assignments. So for instance, for session 1 today, each student will present at least 2 to 3 minutes spotlight. So this is is due next week.
Yeah, no, actually, I'm glad you said that. We have a sign-up sheet, right? And I think have you all gotten to have you able to get to the Google Docs sign-up sheet?
I did. I signed up for
I thought you got there. I thought that was it. So anybody, please go to the Google Docs sign-up sheet. I think it's located on Brightspace. I'm pretty sure it is. And get yourself a slot. It'll start next week, week 2. Did somebody already signed up for week 2, I think? I thought it was you. Yeah, I thought it was you. Okay. Yeah, it was.
Yes.
Yeah. So before we leave today, you will have your assignment. The group going to come up with what we want to probe. Does that make sense? And then that's and just one student each for 8 weeks. That's the only thing there. Not every week do you have to do a presentation. No. And there will be none this week, obviously. It'll be next week. And the first one will be Empress, and she'll do a thing on what did I come up with today. Now, Professor, can't you be more specific? I'll address what you're trying to get at. I think we should know by the end of the class. What do we want to talk about? What do we want to know about? That's really what you are. You're kind of an independent researcher for us. Does that make sense? You okay with that, Empress? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Let's take a short 10-minute break. We'll be right back. Get yourself coffee or whatever you need to do, and we'll resume in 10 minutes. And we'll be ready for the next thing we'll do is the case study. So if you want to kind of peruse the case study, you're welcome to do that too. And we'll pick up into groups of 2, and I'll assign you a question. I'll put it up on the board, and you'll see what that is. Okay? All right. Thanks. We'll sign off for right now. Okay, who would like to begin? The questions, the first one was kind of broad, and you could take about any piece. I also understand you're kind of getting used to this format. So, give me some feedback on that first question, which was basically what we're trying to get at is what's the core of the case here? What KFC is trying to do is, do a better job of serving their customers. Jatin has been responsible for, kind of bringing technology to play here. What did you come up with? What are your thoughts to those questions? Who wants to begin? Would
Michelle, do you want to kick it off, you and I?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I like it.
I can start, you can start, whatever.
Okay. Well, initially when we talked about it, one of the things that I mentioned as far as them wanting to implement the technology, that's a great thing, but you're talking about over 1,000 of these stores and 95% of them being franchisees owned. And so that's individuals. And so I think that could be a problem when you're talking about unplanned costs for their fiscal year. And also too, I thought about these might be like kind of mom and pops franchisees that already have very limited technology. So now you want to bring in an elevated level of technology. So that implementation might be really challenging. So the cost and just even being able to implement that in a space where maybe people are not using technology at all. You want to add anything else, Jill?
Yeah, no, I think you said it perfectly. And we were hearkening back to our own experiences working in retail and just in terms of sometimes the center, and even in this case study, it talked about having this global strategy, but it's actually for the right, which audience, so if you're not looking at both the current in-house stores and the franchisees who carry your brand equally importantly, you're not doing the job correctly. So they're almost building from the center out where they need to be building from the front line back to the center. We see that so much, and we thought that we have had similar experiences in that exact realm. So
well said. Who else wants to chime in there on basically on the what they opened up? That's pretty good comments. Start off.
Yeah, I can chime in. I was in a group with Isa and Cassie, and what we kind of talked about was this idea that we actually learned yesterday, stage gating. And so the idea of like a multi-phase kind of rollout for these changes. And essentially, as we're kind of getting through each stage, as we're kind of meeting the KPIs, moving kind of onward to that next stage. And then I think one thing we also talked about is anytime you're making kind of changes like this that are, being rolled out to multiple franchises, we don't want to like lose that that overall trust that we have with so many, so many different franchisee owners. And so we were thinking, we'd want to take several locations and have KFC fund potentially doing kind of implementing these changes, funding it themselves, kind of testing it out, seeing, where the experimentation goes, and then taking the learnings back to franchisees and saying, hey, here's what we tried out, and here's what we think will bring more money to your pockets, rather than, just kind of coming in hot and saying, we have ideas, here are the changes you need to make, and forcing them to implement.
Coming in hot. I love that part. And that happens all the time. I mean, we're at the center of the universe. We're at corporate, so we know the answers. So to do it, and let us go back to lunch, please. Who else got something to say?
I want to add to what was just said as far as there's also limited access to capital for franchisees. If I'm not mistaken, they have to fund for all the things that all the tools, all the resources that they need to run the franchise. So if KFC wants to implement new technology, if I'm not mistaken, they would have to fund that themselves. And so that could be a little challenging, especially depending on where they're located and how much revenue that they're generating.
Yeah, if Jatin is going to come up with some package, if you will, that we all want to get on board, the franchisee is going to have to pay for it to implement it. You're exactly right. Who else wants to throw something in there? Anybody else?
One interesting thought that Cassie had, just thinking about the approach differently for new franchisees versus existing franchisees, and how do you implement these changes and set the expectations from the get-go at the contract stage. And so we discussed how it could be a hard like the company could take a more direct approach with new and interested shop owners, but then have that different approach where they use data to back up this is going to be better for all of us at the end of the day, for those people who've owned their businesses for years and in some cases decades. So just thinking about the different approaches there depending on where in the life stage of the business and the franchise they're in.
Good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. As a matter of fact, I'm going to bounce off a couple of thoughts here as you were talking. One of the things that happens when we're trying to go through, well, let's call it change management. I like that term very much. I always think of change not so much as change is occurring here, but change is occurring out there that we have to adapt ourselves to. That's really the way I kind of like to think about it. And two things have to be kind of embedded in that. And one of them you mentioned, the group mentioned trust. If there is no trust, if there is no basis for saying we're kind of all shaking our heads, moving in the right direction, we trust one another, I believe, you're probably doomed for failure, right? That's really what it comes down to. The second thing is, I've learned this over time, is that if you want someone to actually use a tool or learn something for that matter, you talked about that earlier, how do you get people on board? Give them a task. And so task and trust become two important kinds of things that have to be embedded in the process. And I think Justin's trying to get that, right? And then something else that was mentioned here was the idea of a pilot. And I'm a big fan of pilots because I think one of the issues is that in a corporate environment, I sat in one for a long time and learned all the mistakes. You think you got all the answers and you don't know. And a pilot is a means that you could actually interject a process into an organization to see if it will fly, so to speak, without turning the entire organization upside down. So you designate a group, 2 stores, 3 stores, to kind of pilot the project. And then people will say, hey, how's it going over there? And they kind of become interested in it. So trust, and then on top of that, this whole idea of task, and then having a pilot. I think that's kind of what we're trying to get at. By the way, we'll do this case again next week, so don't put it away. Go back and read it again because there's a lot in here, and we're skimming the surface. So who else can talk? Cassie's not here, right?
I'm here.
Oh, you weren't popping up on my screen.
Okay, hiding.
I got to fix my screen. It's not showing everybody. Okay. Anything to add, Cass?
No, I'm a big fan of pilots too. I guess I just say I feel like when you're injecting a new technology or process, having early adopters who are already excited about it to then be kind of like drinking the Kool-Aid early on and then telling everyone or like being able to use them as like evangelists for the new thing. And not always going for those people who are just gonna like take what you're take it and make it, the best, like be positive about it, going for some of the people who might be on the fence so that you have that, so that it is trust building. And yeah, I've just seen that work out better. And also for the people implementing, like IT, especially, like there's so much testing, but until you flip that switch or like implement it, it's good for the organization to do it that way too, because you start fixing problems before you're rolling it out and breaking things that you didn't realize could be broken.
Well, the whole thing of king things is really, it's kind of in the news today, but the fact of the matter is, don't want to break things. What we're trying to do is maintain some stability, as you mentioned, Cass. And I think if you maintain stability and you say 80% of the organization, you don't have to change a thing you're doing. Just keep doing what you're doing. This group is going to test this out and they're going to report back. And something else you kind of hinted at, I think you were saying pretty clearly, was get some people on there that are going to say, I don't know. Because if it's just a bunch of yes, 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 then you're probably not going to get any kind of trust. And somebody says, "Well, I just saw something you didn't see." Well, then it's never going to make it to the scrimmage line, right? Krishna, anything to add? I think we haven't heard from you yet.
Well, just what I said earlier. Basically,
Did you open up this conversation?
I did.
Oh, okay. Okay, forget that then. I'm sorry. I apologize. Once I saw it, I realized I was wrong. Okay, here's the next question. And essentially, it comes down to, what was Jatin's challenge? What was challenge? Articulate the challenge. And how did it translate into a set of actions? That's really what we're always trying to do when we're trying to get something like a new process, a new piece of technology. I don't know why I'm doing this. What is the challenge? Articulate that and then tell me why. So let's go ahead and break into groups again. I think we should be able to do it without any issue this time. And I think everybody's set up properly. I'll just go ahead and open the rooms. We'll go till 9 o'clock, if that's okay with you, maybe a little after. If you need more time, just shoot me an answer. Well, let's go to 9:05. We'll have 10 minutes to wrap up then. So I'm going to open rooms and go ahead and go. Hey, Cassie, who you got there?
This is Benjamin.
Daddy,
Can say hi.
How you doing?
So can you say hi?
What's your name?
This is Benny. You say I'm
Hey,
Benny.
Benny. Is that where you live, Earth? Is that where you live? That's great. Okay. Listen, appreciate everything. Let's kind of jump into this quickly. What kind of things did you come up with? Anybody want to be brave and start? Go ahead and address the question, which was basically What were Jetton's initially findings, and what do you do about it?
I can go.
Good, perfect. Thanks. Allie?
Well, there were many challenges.
Yes, there were.
The ones we identified, Empress and I, we was really adapting the business to post-COVID demands and keeping up with those demand of orders. There were also gaps in digital maturity across the restaurant. So there is that task of really transforming a business that wasn't driven by technology. Misalignment of their tech team and constant shifting priorities. So, that eventually led to the tech team being more business flow centric versus project based because there was like constant shifting priorities, which led to incomplete projects. And then lastly, one of the challenges what we talked about was adoption and trust of data. So there was that example in the case study where the chef was ignoring the forecast, right? And systems were really difficult to use and not intuitive. And so some of the ways that this was addressed was creating more of those user-friendly, intuitive tools, improving that onboarding experience so people felt more comfortable with those tools. I think they talked about live projections or better real-time data that could be trusted. And then I think there was that team restructuring as well to address those discrepancies between, being project and not holistically looking at the business on the technology side.
Well said. Want to add anything to that? Who was your part? Yeah. Anything
Empress.
Yeah,
Did I miss anything?
Ali, you pretty much got everything. Even I just gonna say one thing is just keeping up with the demand of orders, because they went to mobile delivery. That was a little bit challenging for them to maintain that and keep the workflow that they had. But as Ali mentioned, of new processes and new technology that kind of helped to streamline the flow.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. Cass, how about your group?
Yeah, so I feel like Ali covered it perfectly. I don't know if I have anything to add other than I'll just reiterate. I think, yeah, lots of challenges. And I think the ones that kind of stuck out like sore thumbs were these legacy systems and nothing talked to each other. And, just everything was very decentralized. And then it made sense because you have this tech team that's kind of triaging things like project-based things, and nothing is really super business cohesive. In terms of like what actions were to take, obviously there's like this kind of pre-work, I'd call it, figuring out estimates of like, well, just seeing like even the cook example that Ali mentioned, like seeing it in real time, that's like that design thinking, which we were also talking about last night, but like seeing it in real time, like someone ignore that and then asking them why and finding out that it's like they don't trust the system. And I accidentally read and Issa did as well, the second case B first and then A, and I was like, oh, I realized A was first. Anyways, my point is that he's gonna be presenting. So what the action is like synthesizing all of this and presenting the strategy for how to move forward and kind of the business case, but also how much would it cost? Like what's the investment for all of this, but also what's the reward?
You kind of skipped to the finish of the case, which is fine. It gives you a little more in-depth understanding. But I think summarizing, I think they captured a lot of data in this organization, but it wasn't operational. And if that's an ongoing issue, right? I mean, it's always we're swimming in data, but we really can't analyze it. That's what it comes down to. I think the second thing that the whole tech setup it was not coherent, as you kind of pointed out. This stuff wasn't jiving. It wasn't producing any kind of fluidity. And then there was this problem with project management because that kind of got set aside, and people, so now there was no guidance in terms of how to do things, I guess is the best way to say that. And then finally, that the current systems weren't improving performance, which led to the whole reason of why you do this. One of the things you try to do when you do any kind of change management thing is to say, why are we doing this? Fundamentally, what's the whole point? So next week we will jump into it again, but I think you kind of captured the essence of this case. Please read through it again and give yourself a little bit more time to kind of dig into this. That's the whole purpose of why I'm doing 2 weeks on it, is just so that you can kind of get a taste of it and then you can jump back in. So here, let me just throw this up here. I said I would talk to you about next week. So the assignment, by the way, I've got an assignment also, a special 2 to 3 minute presentation assignment. But before that, let's talk about this assignment down here: conducting an audit of marketing and communication technology tools used in your organization or brand of your choice. I think you're all prepared to maybe do that now, right? I mean, you probably you kind of gave me a flavor for that in your initial write-ups. Just bounce off of that and talk about the things that you're using or have used in a situation, where you had it before. Whatever you want to do. Prepare a coherent kind of a statement or an audit, if you will. An audit's nothing more than listening or hearing or understanding what it is you've been doing, kind of setting a baseline. This is what's being done. And then once you do that, so we use this and this and this to do these 3 different, and here's how it's working, or, this one never really got folded in properly. That's what I'm looking for. Everybody wants to know how long. I work on words of 500 words is plenty to do anything anywhere. Anyhow, I'm big on brevity. I don't like long-winded stuff. I like brevity because it tells me you really had to think about it and really had to get to the basis of the issue. So do an audit of an organization, a plan, anywhere you've done or what you're doing right now. And then tell me, where are the weaknesses? What is not working here? What's happening? And it's an exercise to kind of make you immerse yourself into a real life problem, a real life challenge that you're familiar with, and how the technology is in fact helping or how the technology is not helping. 500 words or fewer. Thoughts? Anybody have any lack of clarity on what I want from that? I will open if it's not open yet, I don't think it is, I'll open a post or a position so you can file that before next week, of course. And then we have this special sign-up. By the way, I think I've cleared everybody on the sign-up sheet. If you didn't, let me know right now on the sign-up sheet. If you didn't get cleared to put your name in, you'd have to have put your name in already. But if you didn't get cleared, let me know. I think I cleared everybody. I think you're okay.
So week 1 is next week
Well,
on the sign-up sheet.
Oh, it actually should have said week 2. I think when people go on and sign up, it triggers back to week 1.
Oh, okay. So
I found that out too. I didn't realize it did that. It doesn't hold those. Week 1 would be next week in that case. Yes, that's right.
Okay.
But it was originally set up as week 2 because it would be week 2. But yeah, so week 2 would be next week or week 1, whatever it is. The first one on the page is for next week. And then it follows from there. Thank you for clarifying that. That's very good. Then for the 2 to 3 minute thing, here's what I'm thinking. And let me get out of this for a second. If we go over to chat, I'm thinking about this as an assignment. Who has it, by the way? Is it you, Michelle? Who's next week?
It's me, Empress.
I'm sorry, Empress. Okay. In 2 to 3 minute briefing, outline the steps you'd take to create a dashboard to effectively monitor the data and measure the progress of an organization. Not asking for, a full-fledged, what would the steps you'd take to create something like that? Now, I'm going to say this for everybody. I am a fan of using AI. I don't care what you use, but it's part of our lives. Get used to it. This is a technology class. Use it. Everybody's worried about cheating with it. I use it as a think partner. I do it all the time. When I write, when I do anything, I will chat with I use Claude a lot and I use ChatGPT, but I'll chat with it to say, hey, tell me what you would do. And I'll look at it. What it helps me do is order my thinking. Maybe it'll help you order your thinking. I don't know how you use it, but you're welcome to use it. Is what I'm saying. I don't want you to just submit that assignment as such. And when we talk about it, you'll be able to kind of tell me whether or not you just submitted the assignment, but you can use AI is what I'm saying. So does that make sense? Outline the steps you'd take to create a dashboard to effectively monitor data and measure the progress of an organization and present that to the group. You feel comfortable with that, Empress?
I do. And I'm just presenting. I don't have to submit it in Brightspace,
No,
right?
no.
Okay.
The only thing you have to submit in Brightspace, and I'll open a repository for that, is the assignment that I previously talked about. I'll show you again here in a second. But if you're okay with that, Empress, we'll go that way. Does anybody else have any suggestions as to how to change or make that a better assignment for her?
Will we get if our week is up, will we get the assignment prompt the week prior or how?
Just like she just did today.
Okay.
Yeah, she'll get it. We will settle on it before so that
Got
you
it.
have it next week. When you sign up, that's when you'll get it. And I think it works best that way. And that way you all mention the same thing I have concerns about is, now, what do I have to do next week? So the only thing you have to do next week, and we're going to go back to that now if we have no more questions on Empress's assignment. Okay, so this is the assignment for next week. Conduct an audit of marketing and communication technology tools used in your organization or a brand of your choice if you're familiar with something you did in the past. And categorize each tool by function. I mean, CRM, ad tech, CM, whatever. We did a little bit of that already. Matter of fact, some of you actually submitted exactly that. You know, this was the social media tools we used and so forth. That's what I'm looking for. Any confusion on that? Okay. And if you're using a CRM, if you're using Salesforce or something, just lay that out. And then the next thing I want you to do is identify overlaps, gaps, inefficiencies. One of the things I read and I heard from you all tonight was oftentimes with technology, you can't get it to dance properly. It never seems to want to run very smoothly. That's kind of an issue. What do we got here? Oh, we're going over, aren't we? I'm sorry. What's the message? I put in the dates. Okay. Was there anything else that I wanted to add? Okay. I'm just reading chat. I'm sorry. So then that's the assignment. Reflect on the final thing is to reflect on which tools are essential and what you would change or remove. Don't make more out of it than it is. You'll be very familiar. I've already seen some of you express that. Tell me what worked, what didn't work, and what you would change. Anybody unclear on what needs to be done for the assignment?
I just have one other qualifying question, which is under Brightspace, there is something due on May 24th that says reflect. Thinking back on your first week, what learning struck you most?
Yeah, right down here. Yeah, that's essentially, is it due the 24th?
That's what it says in Brightspace, but
well, wait a second. It should be the 27th, I think. I'll check that. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll check that.
Okay, it does say the 24th.
Our next class is, I'm not on the calendar next to me. It is, where's my date? It's the 28th. So it'll be due the 27th. I'll change that.
Okay, great. I didn't know if you just wanted
the reflection. That's it. Down below, we have a reflect, right, in your course diary or share with on the reflect space. Think of a time when you experienced, you can do either one of those things, quite frankly. All I'm looking for from reflection is you to feed back something you've seized on, learned, or had something, because I read those and I get an understanding of what the class is picking up and what they're, kind of grooving on and what they're not. So that's what I'm looking for. And you can do it either way. Tell me what the most important thing you learned was, or think of a time when you experienced or personalized some brand interaction that you wanted to talk about. either one of those things. I'm very flexible on that. All I'm looking for on those reflections is for you to feed back what's going on in your head with respect to what you're learning in the class.
Okay.
Does that make it clear?
Yep,
Right.
that's helpful. Thank you.
All right, great. Anything else that we've got? I'm running way over. It looks like I got, well, maybe I'm not, but what do you got? Anything else? Okay, everybody's quiet. Must not be anything. So, thoughts? Anything going on in your heads? Jill, you've got an issue with the course packs. I'm going to work on
I'm
that.
good. I got it.
You did?
It
Okay.
was just stuck. I just was stuck on it. It was on my computer, not the course pack. So I'm good to go.
I'm good enough. I'm happy to hear
Thank
that.
you.
I will get the assignments squared away on Brightspace. There will be another video up probably sometime tomorrow. And it isn't due, I don't think, until the next following whatever. But it'll be up tomorrow. You'll be able to see that. What else? I guess nothing. So great first class. Thank you very much. Always hard to get the first one launched and figure out some sort of a rhythm. This is a way we'll try to do it, so that we do kind of jump into the case. The good news is we'll revisit the case again next week. And since some of you actually read ahead, you're going to have a little bit of a scoop on us. So that's good. So, and Benny, I want him to study this also so that he has this all down. He understands what's going on because, he's got to get the credit too, Cassie.
Yeah, definitely. He's on it.
All right. Thanks. Good to see you all. It's nice to meet you all and bid you adieu. Take care.
Thanks. Great class. Appreciate it.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Good night.
Bye.
Fleet Week. It's Fleet Week in New York. Thanks.
Enjoy.
got 2 hours to kind of get at it. So keep your camera on and stay attentive and all that kind of stuff.